Hello everyone, I am role-playing Garchomp, and today I'm here to talk to you about my experiences with one of my favorite video game franchises growing up, Pokémon. Who could forget Pokémon, that classic series of games where you catch them all and strive to be the very best like no one ever was. It was a huge part of growing up for me, as it was my go-to game series throughout middle and high school. So today, I'd like to reflect back on my favorite memories from this incredible franchise. This is my Pokémon Phase. Before we get started, I'd like to talk about the build-up to the phase. In 2008, my sister had found the franchise called Pokémon. She started out as a casual fan, collecting the cards and watching the show. I started out pretty much the same way. She showed me the anime, and I did enjoy it for a good while, more on that later. I also played some of the side games like Pokemon Battle Revolution, Rumble, etc. I did collect the cards as well, but I didn't get attached to those, seeing how they were so expensive, and it also doesn't help when my sister would always steal my rare cards. While on the subject of the trading card game, my sister still collects the cards to this day, meaning she's been collecting them for 10 years now. In late 2009, my sister got Pokemon Sapphire, and she was very attached to the game. She would be playing it everywhere she went, and it sparked my curiosity. What made that game so unique and enjoyable? So it was at that point that I looked into the core series of Pokemon games. That Christmas, both me and my sister got Nintendo DSi's, and we were attached to it. We loved the apps, especially Flipnote Studio. However, we didn't have too many games for it. But on April 3rd, 2010, that would change. I was at my local electronics store looking for some DS games to get. And that is when the Pokemon phase officially began, when I got my first core Pokemon game, Pokemon Diamond. Oh, the nostalgia. Pokemon Diamond was unlike any other game I had played prior. So many things to do, so many things to see, the possibilities were limitless. So I bet the one question on your mind is, who did I choose as my first starter Pokemon? Turtwig, Chimchar, or Piplup? When I first saw the starters, I was pleasantly surprised because these were all characters I had seen watching the show, and now I was able to play with these characters I was familiar with. But enough talk, let's cut to the chase. My first starter Pokemon was, drumroll please, Piplup. But why Piplup? Because he's too dumb cute. But in all seriousness, I picked Piplup because it was the one I was most familiar with. Also, don't ask why I named it Larry Boy. So there I was, me and my Piplup, traveling across the Sinnoh region, pushing through any challenge that came in our way. And the more I played, minutes turned to hours. Hours turned to days. Days turned to weeks. Weeks turned to months. And before I knew it, I had found my new favorite thing ever. Pokemon had taken over my biggest phases at the time, like NASCAR, Sonic, the Wii, etc. Pokemon had literally taken over my life, and that was only the beginning. About a month after I bought Diamond, I had beaten the Elite Four and Champion, and it was at that moment that I sought out my next Pokemon game. I got two, Pokemon Ruby and Pokemon Platinum. Starting with Ruby, since my sister had Pokemon Sapphire, I thought it would only be natural for me to get Pokemon Ruby. And along with this, I also got my sister Pokemon Pearl, but back to Ruby. This time, I picked Trico, and I instantly regretted that decision, seeing how I could not get past Watson, the third gym leader. So I restarted the game, this time picking Torchic, and not only did I obliterate Watson, I managed to get through the rest of the game as well. And to this day, I still regard Trico as my least favorite starter Pokemon ever. With Ruby in particular, me and my sister had a lot of conversations about this Pokemon game for reasons I explained earlier. And now, moving on to my second favorite Pokemon game of all time, Pokemon Platinum. Oh hell yes! Pokemon Platinum is a huge improvement over Diamond and Pearl in almost every way possible. The battles were faster paced, the Pokédex was expanded, and these changes nearly rendered Diamond and Pearl obsolete in comparison. I considered Pokemon Platinum to be my favorite video game of all time for a while. and for good reason. I replayed this game so many times it was unbelievable, and this would be the only Pokemon game I bought multiple times, probably because I kept losing my other copies. One Pokemon I used during my first playthrough of Platinum was Garchomp. This thing was so OP, I was kicking everything in the ass with this Garchomp. I felt like I had unlimited power. I love that Garchomp so much it would become my favorite Pokemon of all time, hence why my channel is named Roleplaying Garchomp. Another thing I remembered when playing Pokemon Platinum was the amount of times I spammed the rare candies cheat. Oh shit, I forgot to talk about this. When I bought Diamond, I also got Action Replay, a device that basically lets you add cheat codes to your games. And the code I use the most is the rare candies code, because I was far too impatient to grind on my own, and using this code made it much easier for me. And admit it, you've probably used this code yourself at one point. This was the code I would continue to use until Pokemon Black and White 2, more on that later. As for the other codes, I really didn't use too many of them to the extent of the Rare Candies code other than to experiment with. In August 2010, me and my family took a vacation to Denver, Colorado. And what did I spend most of the vacation doing? Why, playing Pokemon Soul Silver, of course. Just like the other games I played before Soul Silver, I would not want to stop playing it. So much so that I beat the entire game during the vacation. As for my thoughts on the game, I really enjoyed it. However, my biggest problem with Soul Silver is how low level the opponents were, with the Elite Four being only in the low to mid 40s in levels. Seriously? Then again, the game does have 2 regions to explore, so I guess it makes sense that it's that low leveled. But I can't help but feel disappointed by that aspect. And so, I spent the rest of 2010 expanding my Pokemon collection. I bought more of the classic Pokemon games like Blue, Crystal, Leaf Green, etc. I continued to watch the television show, and I collected more of the cards. Going into 2011, my Pokemon Phase was at full swing. 2011 marked the beginning of a new generation of Pokemon with the release of Pokemon Black and Pokemon White. I got Pokemon Black, seeing how I preferred the version exclusives in Black better than White. Like Soul Silver, I felt that Black didn't quite hit the money like Platinum did. My biggest problem with Black and White was not only how linear the Unova region felt, but the story as well. Now I know the series has always been linear with collecting the 8 gym badges and defeating the Elite Four and Champion, but with Black and White, I felt this linearity a lot more. This Pokemon game in particular had a much more serious tone with its story, putting a lot more emphasis on it, and I guess that it took its toll on the overall design of the region. Another problem I had with Pokemon Black and White was the fact that the regional Pokédex only consisted of the new Pokemon. And I know some people prefer it like this, but I like having the opportunity of playing with old favorites as long as there's not too many old Pokemon that outweigh the new. And oh boy, we'll get to that in a moment. While I did like the game, I felt like there were some improvements that needed to be made. Around the same time I stopped watching the anime as I felt it was getting too annoying. Along with the Pokemon anime, I stopped watching other cartoons like SpongeBob, Phineas and Ferb, etc. Later in 2011, I took a break from Pokemon as I would spend the rest of 2011 and early 2012 playing other games like Star Fox 64, the Super Smash Bros. Series, Banjo-Kazooie, and more. However, later on in 2012, the Pokemon Phase would make a grand return with my favorite Pokemon game of all time, Pokemon Black and White 2. Oh yes, easily up there with my top 5 video games to this day. I replayed these games so many times I felt like they got better with every playthrough. Like what Platinum did with Diamond and Pearl, Black and White 2 fixed literally every issue. Get it? Because the Japanese name of the Unova region is issue. But yeah, it fixed every issue I had with the first Black and White in every way possible, and some. One feature I really thought that was useful that was actually introduced in the first Black and White games is rustling grass. This lets you encounter rare Pokemon that you otherwise wouldn't find normally. However, one Pokemon that is common with rustling grass is Audino. Although they're a pain in the ass to take down, They offered loads of experience points that on most occasions would result in your Pokemon leveling up instantly. It got to the point where Audino would be the only Pokemon worth grinding with. This method of grinding is what I call Audino grinding, and by doing this, I stopped using the rare candies cheat. One time in summer 2013, while doing Audino grinding for the 4th gym in Pokemon Black 2, I encountered my first and only shiny Pokemon. And I bet you can't guess what Pokemon it is. Yep, of course, it's Audino. And in case you've been living under a rock and you don't know what a shiny Pokemon is,
basically it's a different colored version of a Pokemon that you have a 1 in 8,192 chance of encountering.
While I did have other shiny Pokemon like the red Gyarados and the shiny Garchomp you get for free in the post-game of Black 2, hence why I prefer Black 2 over White 2, the shiny Audino felt special because it was the only one I encountered in the wild, giving it that extra ounce of pure awesomeness. One more thing I want to say, the footage you're seeing is a Pokemon Black 2 Let's Play I did when the game first came out on my old channel, The 64th Gamer. So if you want to hear my 14-year-old self going through puberty while giving the most cringeworthy commentary of all time, feel free to check that out. But hey, don't forget to come back here. Pokemon Black and White 2 are such incredible games. There's so much more I could talk about, we'd be here for days, but we've got to move on. Going into 2013, Pokemon was once again my top phase, but only 3 months into Black and White 2, something extraordinary had occurred. Late in 2012, an advertisement appeared for a major Pokemon announcement in the form of a Nintendo Direct. And on January 8, 2013, the Direct had finally come at 4 in the morning, the first time I woke up for anything that early. The live presentation had begun. Iwata led the Direct going through every Pokemon game, but then a new game was about to be announced. The trailer started with Pikachu on the Eiffel Tower for whatever reason. The Nintendo 3DS logo came up, and surely enough, the next generation of Pokemon games was announced, Pokemon X and Y. I jumped out of my chair screaming with excitement I had never felt prior, waking up the entire family in the process. It was the most amazing thing I had ever witnessed, and I was more than ready for the 9-month gap that awaited. That same night, I had a dream of Pokemon X and Y, and in the dream, there was a cloud city above the sky that featured an outlook to a cathedral-like structure that was the Pokemon League. And I woke up from that dream even more excited for the upcoming games. So I have a question for you, the viewers. Did you have a dream for an upcoming game you were so excited for? If so, what game was it, and what was in the dream? Leave a comment below, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Besides playing Black and White 2 over and over infinite amounts of times, something else I did prior to the release of Pokemon X and Y is that I drew my own Pokemon regions along with my own Pokemon. And admit it, you've probably done one of these things yourself if you are a Pokemon fan like me, but back to X and Y. Throughout the months leading up to the release of Pokemon X and Y, more and more information about the games got revealed. One of these features that got revealed was Meta Evolutions. Like many, I was skeptical at first, but I was still excited, especially with Meta Garchomp announced. That had me squealing. And finally, the day had come. October 12th, 2013 had finally arrived. The day Pokemon X and Y released. 9 months may not seem too long now, but back then it felt like a decade. So there I was at the local GameStop with both versions and the strategy guide in my hands at last. Holding these things in my hands was like holding hands with Jesus Christ himself. This was it. I could feel it. Pokemon X and Y were going to be the greatest video games ever. I load up Pokemon X and there was Professor Sycamore ready to introduce me to the Kalos region. Oh boy, here we go. The greatest adventure of all adventures is about to begin. This is it! That's it. That was the entire main game. What? Okay, maybe I rushed it. Maybe I got ahead of myself. It's 3 in the morning after all. I'll just play the after game tomorrow. Maybe it'll be good. Just one measly side quest in Lumio City? Not any Elite Four rematch teams? No Pokemon World Tournament? No Battle Frontier? No nothing! That's all this game is! A whole bunch of nothing! Hey, now. Don't say that. They're brand spanking new games. Surely something will turn up. Oh hey, Pokemon Y! I'll just do a Nuzlocke on this. Now, before I continue, for those who don't know what a Nuzlocke is a fan-created challenge that makes Pokemon games harder. The basic rules being that players can only capture the first Pokemon they encountered in an area, and once your Pokemon faint, they're considered dead and can never be used again. That said... Four deaths! Only 4 fucking deaths! It took me 3 months across 5 playthroughs to finally realize the truth. Oh my god. This game. It fucking blows. Pokemon X and Y were the most disappointing games I have ever played. The problems speak for themselves. One major problem I mentioned earlier is that the old Pokemon clearly outweigh the new. Over 450 Pokemon are in this Pokedex, and only 72 are new. What? Only 72? What a ripoff! The Mega Evolution feature I mentioned just earlier was a massive letdown. It makes already OP enough Pokemon even more OP, which is probably why a majority of the Mega Stones are locked until the post-game. Which makes you question, why didn't they just save all the Mega Evolutions for the after game? Another massive problem I have is the redesigned experience share. In this game, it gives the experience to every party Pokemon as opposed to just one single Pokemon like before. My guess is that this had to be a last minute change because the new EXP share is unbalanced as fuck. Even with it off, your Pokemon will still be 5 levels over the gym leaders, and I've always preferred being under the gym leaders' levels. When my Pokemon did eventually match the opponents by the time I reached the Elite Four, I was still one-hit KOing them, despite the Elite Four being the highest level they'd ever been. Same goes for the Champion's Ace, which I one-hit KO'd with a Talonflame Brave Bird. How pathetic! My last problem I'd like to point out is just how uninteresting and unmemorable the characters were. Especially the villains, Team Flare, whose motives are by far the worst in the entire series. And if you thought Black and White 1 had too many rivals, just you wait till X and Y. 4 rivals, none of which I can recognize. The gym leaders are pathetic, the Elite Four is pathetic, the champion's a pushover, and dear God, don't get me started with AZ. 2014 had arrived, and my Pokemon Phase was starting to lose its touch again. With Pokemon X and Y being such a disappointment, I sought out a new phase before the next Pokemon games had released. It was the year that I discovered Sasuke, a Japanese obstacle course show, and anyone who's seen this channel should know that I'm all too familiar with it. One game I got into that year was Perfect Dark. It's a first-person shooter for the Nintendo 64 where you kill bad guys and complete objectives. The game was made by Rare, which was one of my favorite game companies at the time, who also made GoldenEye, another FPS I got into shortly after. This would lead into another major phase, which we'll get to in a bit. But this would be a sign that my tastes in gaming were changing. I got a Wii U that Christmas prior, and it was yet another disappointment. So Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire had to be the Black and White 2 of Generation 6. And was it? Not really. Though an improvement over X and Y, it still wasn't a massive one. The EXP share is still OP, but if it's off, it's far more balanced and it feels more like the original Ruby and Sapphire with it off. One major problem that carries over from X and Y is Mega Evolutions, and it's even worse here. When you receive the Mega Evolution device in X and Y, they give you a Lucario. But here, they give you a fucking Latios or Latios, a free legendary only 5 gym badges in. Although I consider Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire an improvement over X and Y, I'd still rather play the original Ruby and Sapphire over this. But even then, I still had high hopes going into 2015 and beyond. But little did I know, the worst was yet to come for an already dying phase. On April 30th, 2015, during my mathematics class, we had an Excel project to do in the computer lab. It was super easy, and everyone had finished it by the halfway portion of the class period. Right as I was about to finish my project, I looked up and every student was playing Halo Combat Evolved. As easy as it was to point out that they shouldn't be playing this during class, I gave in. I finished the project and I jumped right into the game. It was Capture the Flag on Blood Gulch, and I was having the time of my life. I was feeling the same excitement that I felt when playing Pokemon Diamond for the first time, and I consider this the day I became a man. But what does this mean for Pokemon? Of course, I was optimistic for the upcoming Pokemon game, but I had my doubts. If Pokemon was going to be at the top again, it has to learn from every mistake made in Generation 6 at that point. Knowing past patterns suggested that Pokemon Z would launch by the end of the year. By the time May had passed, we did not receive any announcements yet, considering the year prior Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire was announced in May. Naturally, this led me to assume that they're saving it for E3, and after all, this is where video gaming's biggest announcements are made. Microsoft opened E3 with a strong showing. With Halo 5 nearing its release, it got me excited after the experience I had with Combat Evolved. Rare Replay was also announced, another game I was excited for. I really enjoyed Microsoft's conference, and it got me thinking about getting an Xbox One. But the conference I was looking forward to the most was Nintendo's, as I had high hopes for a comeback. They took to the plate. The first game that was shown was Star Fox Zero. A strong game to start out with, albeit being shown in an interesting way. Although they were off to a good start, things would take a turn for the worst. They started to showcase rather bizarre titles, such as Yarn Yoshi, Metroid Prime Federation Force, Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, another Mario Tennis game. By then, I, like many others, would soon feel the pain of disappointment ready to burst. But I was still optimistic for a Pokemon Z reveal, considering X and Y was shown at the beginning of their 2013 conference, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire was shown at the middle of their 2014 conference. So naturally, I thought they'd be saving it for last. Then they showed Super Mario Maker, which wasn't anything new considering the hacking tools for fan games at the time. Then they present this awfully cringe-worthy rendition of the Super Mario Bros. Theme, and I was just sitting there, still waiting for the last announcement of Pokemon Z. There was nothing after that song. That was it. Just simply saying that I felt betrayed is clearly an understatement. It felt like getting rammed by a goddamn buffalo on fire into an exploding volcano full of hungry lava sharks ready to devour me instantly! It was a devastating blow to all Nintendo fans, as this was the company's worst E3 since 2008. This awful showing would be the leading cause to me selling my Wii U by the end of the year for an Xbox One, in a measure to draw away from Nintendo and loom closer to Xbox and Halo. 2015 came and went, and still no sign of Pokemon Z. By then, my Halo phase was well underway, and was the new phase to take over my life. That February, we finally got a new Pokemon game reveal. Although it wasn't Pokemon Z, they skipped straight ahead to Generation 7 with the announcement of Pokemon Sun and Moon. I guess even Nintendo thought Generation 6 was a flop. I wasn't nearly as excited seeing how Generation 6 was such a disappointment, and how much I was focused on Halo, as well as a new show on the channel at the time called Spartan Sasuke. So ultimately, I stopped paying attention to Pokemon related news, and around this time, a new fan game had released called Pokemon Uranium. At its launch, it was very successful, with over 1 million downloads, and was overall one of the best fan games out there. But unfortunately, Nintendo would betray its fans again. After about a week from Uranium's release, Nintendo would file a DMCA takedown notice against the creators of Pokemon Uranium, as well as the creators of another Nintendo fan game, another Metroid 2 remake. Nintendo would also take extra measures to ban live streaming of their games, or worse, take down videos of just simple gameplay. Nintendo was stuck in the past, and I was fed up with it. I did not want to support the company anymore, and it was then that I declared that Pokemon Sun and Moon would be the final Pokemon games I would play through. Going into my last Pokemon adventure, my expectations were at an all-time low. I was fully expecting these games to suck like the previous generation. But it turns out by setting these low expectations would be the right move, as the games were very good. Finally, after 4 years, we finally have another great Pokemon game. Sun and Moon had fixed my biggest problems with Generation 6. Mega Evolutions were saved for the post-game, but new to Generation 7 is Z moves, which is far better than Mega Evolutions in every way. The experience share was finally balanced, as my Pokemon's levels were finally matching the opponents. The only time I felt that I was over-leveled was if I did manual grinding. The game actually felt difficult, as I was losing battles much more often than previous titles. There was more new Pokemon, with 81 new Pokemon introduced in Sun and Moon. While it's still not a lot, it's still an improvement over X and Y. Alolan forms were introduced as well, which are alternative versions of classic Pokemon with different moves and a different typing, which really helped add more flair to the game. One major change is the removal of gyms. Instead, we have totem battles, which are essentially boss battles without trainers, and the gym leaders are replaced with island kahunas, which serve as the major boss battle of each of the 4 islands of the Alola region. At first I wasn't a fan of this change, but as I played the game, I felt that it was a welcome change to the classic formula that had been used for 20 years. The characters are better, the story is better, and overall, Sun and Moon are generally amazing games. When I reached the end credits, I got quite teary, knowing I could end my Pokemon career on a high note. And thus, my Pokemon phase comes to a close. After I beat Sun, I went to see Pokemon Symphonic Evolutions, which I thought was good, all except the anime theme at the end, seeing how I still hated the show then and still do today. Later on, I did get Ultra Sun, but I've only played the first hour of it when it first came out, so unfortunately I can't give my thoughts on this particular Pokemon game. I don't plan on getting Let's Go Pikachu nor Eevee for 2 reasons. 1, I don't have a Nintendo Switch, nor do I intend on getting one. And 2, a lot of the features being added to Let's Go I'm not interested in. And if you're wondering what my thoughts are on Pokemon Go, well, let's just say that I have no plans on playing it ever. But in the end, my Pokemon phase will remain one of my most fond memories to look back upon. And if you're unsure about whether you want to get into Pokemon, I strongly recommend you check it out. And who knows, you might find a passion to catch them all and become the very best, like no one ever was. And yeah, that will conclude the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Details on Spartan Sasuke 15 will be coming in due time, so be sure to tune in for that. And I'll see you then. Goodbye, everyone.